Cult Cinema Podcast.
As your attorney, I advise you to rent a very fast car with no top.
Let's get down to brass tacks here. How much for the age?
All right. Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Gage's Inconsistent Lighting Setup. Just kidding. This is the Cult Cinema Podcast. We talk about movies here. I'm Gage.
I'm Ashley.
And today we're talking about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, directed by Terry Gilliam and released in 1998.
Indeed. What did you think?
I liked this movie quite a bit.
Okay.
I made the mistake of watching it like almost right after I woke up one morning, so I was still like kind of trying to wake up, and there was a lot. There's a lot that goes on visually with this movie.
There is.
And what a fever dream of a film this is, let me tell you. But I do like it a lot. I do like it a lot for the visuals. I do like Johnny Depp's character as Raoul Duke, who is loosely based on Hunter S. Thompson, since the film is based on a book which is a collection of articles from the Rolling Stone written by Hunter S. Thompson back in the early 70s. And so there are a lot of it. There is a good chunk that is fictional, but a lot of them are loosely based on Hunter S. Thompson's actual experience working in Las Vegas back in the early 70s.
Right.
So, but I do think it is very interesting. Like I said, I do like Raul. It's interesting to see Benicio del Toro play Dr. Gonzo in a role like this, considering like I know him in like a lot more dramatic roles. Like, what's the one that he's probably most famous for, where he plays like the mercenary?
The Sicario.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, so seeing him, it's like, it's weird when you see actors kind of drastically jump genres like that, which I do think is interesting, and I think is a good way to show their range as an actor. But it is interesting when you know them specifically for roles like that. I mean, the same can be said about Johnny Depp in this movie, because I grew up watching Johnny Depp in a lot of Tim Burton-based stuff, where he is kind of like he's the weird, creepy guy, and in this he still is kind of like weird and creepy.
Yeah.
But he's definitely got a little bit more soul to him, since he is based on Hunter S. Thompson. So, and a lot of the dialogue and voiceover is pulled directly from the novel. So,
I've not read the novel.
Me neither.
Yeah,
so.
Obviously not. I think Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp, their range as actors is really well portrayed here. The cinematography is gorgeous. Every shot in this movie is done very well. I love the practical effects as well. They did a really good job with that. But I fucking hate this movie.
Really?
I was confusing this movie with another movie. I don't know why. They're very different.
Okay.
And while I'm watching this, I'm like, I don't remember this at all. So then I just kept watching it, and I'm like, this is fucking garbage. Like, nothing about this to me is a good time.
Really?
I have no idea what's going on. And I was even, like, talking to my husband, who loves this movie, because, again, like, that generation, his generation, loves this movie. And I'm like, why? This is terrible.
I think it's because, it does... I mean, the whole movie is basically an acid trip. That's what it is.
Right, I get it.
And so if you grew up in the kind of counterculture scene of the 70s, then I can see why, a lot of people like my uncle, like my dad, are really into this movie.
Okay.
So, but I can definitely see how it's a film that's not for everybody. Because it doesn't really have a standard plot structure. There's not too... I mean, it's very abstract in terms of its story progression and its visuals. So if it's... I mean, there's a reason it has a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it, it seems like.
Right.
But I very much enjoyed it. It's definitely something that I would go back to. Probably not. I would probably have it on as like a background movie if I'm having friends over. Not so much something that I would sit down and give my full attention to again. I say that now, fair. But we'll see. But yeah, I think what it does, I don't know. A lot of stuff that I've done as a filmmaker can be seen as very abstract, and because I do kind of like the idea of just because the whole thing with motion picture is being able to entertain visually, and I think this movie does accomplish that very well with its use of visual, like computer-based visual effects and practical effects, and the use of duck jangles and close-ups, and visually I really enjoyed this movie. And Johnny Depp's character, I think, adds a lot to it, because even though there's a lot of crazy shit you're seeing, the voice, his narration kind of is a little bit more soothing and kind of calms it down a little bit because of how well articulated the character is.
Well, he's also monotone almost the entire time.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that adds a good balance to it. At least that's what I picked up from it. So.
Well, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
And on that note, let's get into it.
All right.
I'll do my best to go scene by scene for this, but it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to sit down and take notes on a movie like this, so I'll probably skip around a lot. Apologize, listeners. It is what it is. If you haven't seen the movie, then watch it and you'll understand exactly why I can't explain it very well.
Yeah.
But like you said, it is based off a novel of the same name. So it is a collection of stories, but the novel is also Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And again, another all-star cast. And there are a couple gems in here that I didn't realize had small cameos, like Christina Ricci, Toby Mcguire, and Mark Hamill, of all people, pop in this movie. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird seeing Toby Mcguire in this movie. That's for sure. Because I can only see Toby Mcguire as Spider-Man. That's like the only thing I can see him as, just because I grew up with him playing that
No,
role.
I agree.
And so seeing him as kind of like this weird, like off hippie character. Granted, we only see like a little bit of him throughout the film, but
right. But he looks weird too.
Yeah.
So
that mullet, like the long hair and his giant forehead.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah. Well, he's bald on top.
Oh,
but
is
not
he?
here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I have a fun fact about it later.
Okay.
But that's why his head looks so weird.
Makes sense.
It's like a weird shave thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we open with scenes of protesting. I'm assuming it's the Vietnam War, since we're set around in the 70s era. But then we quickly cut to Johnny Depp, who is, as you said, Raoul Duke, and Benicio del Toro, Dr. Gonzo, who are just flying down a desert highway in a red sports car. Obviously, they're on drugs. That's pretty apparent from the rip. Duke is seeing bats in the sky as he drives, and then he pulls over to show us all. He has like a full-blown drug pharmacy in his trunk.
Yeah.
Of all kinds of shit, which was fascinating, but also, how'd you get away with that?
It was the 70s.
Oh, yeah,
man.
It's the 70s. Yeah. No one gives a shit. Dr. Gonzo then starts to drive and sing horribly to some song on the radio. And this is when they first pass Toby Mcguire, who is hitchhiking. I did not write down his character's name because I don't know if he has one.
Yeah, I think.
Did you see that?
I don't think so. I think they only refer to him as the hitchhiker. I don't think his name is ever actually brought up.
Agreed. I don't think it's said. I think he's even listed as the hitchhiker in the cast listing. Yeah. But he is not on drugs, so he is terrified of what's happening. Because obviously they're driving super erratically and, saying crazy shit. And this is when we initially start to hear Duke monologue through the whole film. So we literally get that the whole time, but this is pretty much where it starts. Mm-hmm. And he tries to tell Toby Mcguire they're on like a special mission. And then Dr. Gonzo just starts flipping out and like ramming the car all over the road and almost wrecks and dies. It flips back and forth between him calming him down by huffing something in a rag, and then Depp continuing to tell this poor hitchhiking scared as shit man their story of going to Las Vegas. So Dr. Gonzo tells him he's his attorney, which is news to us because I just thought, again, seeing this movie, I was thinking it was different. I didn't realize he was an actual attorney. I thought he was just like his friend the whole movie.
Yeah, no, it does. It definitely his character gives off like, I'm trying to portray a real attorney, but I'm actually a fake attorney vibes. But no, he actually is an like a licensed attorney in the state of California.
Yeah.
Which I
think
part
70s.
Yeah, which is still based on a character from the book of the same name, but in terms of like how it portrays the Hunter S. Thompson's real experience, it is. I can't remember the name of the guy that Gonzo is actually based on, but I believe was all.
It's also Hispanic.
Yeah,
but you're right. I can't remember either.
He's a Hispanic character who is also his attorney or an attorney of some kind.
Right. Right. So we cut quickly away from them in the car to a hotel, and they are at first sitting down at a table. They're talking back and forth about having to go to Vegas, and there's a sound. I don't want to call it an issue. I want to call it odd, where a lot of times when Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp are speaking to each other, which I'm going to assume it has to do with because they're both so fucked up on drugs, that it's almost like the sound designer put the background noise super loud and theirs turned way down. So it's almost hard for you to hear what they're saying specifically a lot of points in this movie. And I have to assume that's like the fog of the drugs or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and for something like that, it is difficult to determine if it is. It's definitely something where if it wasn't intentional, it can be played off very well given the context of the film. So
right, I kind of assumed that's what was happening, but most of the conversations they have in this movie, one, I couldn't hear very well. Mm-hmm. Two, I don't think it mattered.
Well, I
what
do
they
know.
Were saying.
Yeah, I do know that for a lot of like really bad tripping scenes, distortion in voices and messing with the sync of the audio was very common to kind of enhance the effect. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But then again, this movie was at the time made for like not a ton. I think it was, what was it, like 18 million, 8 million, something. There was an 8
I didn't look
somewhere.
at the budget for this one.
But yeah, but I don't. It's hard to say, but I don't think it matters all that much.
No, because they're talking about something, and then all of a sudden, this little person brings them a phone, and then is also trying to get them to, I think, pay a bill. But they're both these kind of like grifter people, so they get out of paying for anything throughout this movie. I don't know if they pay for a single thing, or if they do, it's like on credit, which was obviously newer in the 70s, and at that point you could get like 50 credit cards under fake names. Nobody would find you.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're skipping out on the bill, and they take off to go rent a car because Dr. Gonzo tells him, as his attorney, you need to go rent a car.
I advise you as your attorney to to rent a fast car with no top.
Right. Some of the things he says, as your attorney, I advise you, is fucking funny. So we quickly pop to another bar, and they're trying to arrange this rental car. Then we see clips of them in this like old beat up car, and they're like driving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That happens a couple times in the movie as well. They finally get to the rental place though, and end up renting a vehicle. They then end up on a beach randomly after eating / snorting / I don't know how you do mescaline. I thought it was huffing only, but I'm pretty sure he refers to this scene as eating mescaline.
Probably.
I don't know.
I don't do drugs because I'm a good boy.
I would never do drugs like this. This is terrifying. I feel the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, how the fuck are they alive?
Yeah.
Just how are you alive?
It's like when I watched The Wolf of Wall Street and seeing all like the coke and shit that, what was his name? Jordan Belford.
Belford, yeah.
Yeah. Like all the stuff that he had done is like, God, how is this man still alive?
Mm-hmm.
It's insane.
Agreed. I don't know how people function like that, but I don't know. So after we are away from the beach, it cuts quickly back to them driving again. Dr. Gonzo is again flipping out, going crazy on the wheel. At this point, Toby Mcguire is like, okay, I got to get out of here. And he hops out of the car as they slow down and runs away. Duke then gets back behind the wheel, and him and Dr. Gonzo argue a bit. And he kind of tries to hit Dr. Gonzo with a fly swatter. I thought that was funny. Just a funny random thing. And then we learn at that point they're still decently far away from Las Vegas, but they do have to be there at a certain time in order to get a room because Duke is a reporter or a journalist, and he's writing a story on something. We don't know what that is yet. So then we pop to them at the hotel. But they're literally so fucked up on drugs. Like, we're, as the viewer, seeing all kinds of random weird shit. He's yelling at people / super inverted and quiet. It's so, like, chaotic and back and forth. And the poor woman at the front desk is like, your room isn't ready yet? Why don't you go wait at the bar? And please get the fuck out of my face, because you are so weird. Both of you are so weird.
And they consistently use the effect because he's on acid where the faces will like stretch out.
Right.
And there's a specific like Instagram or Snapchat filter that I see consistently when people try to mimic Italian people. Which is
really?
Yeah, like they'll portray a stereotypical like Italian person talking, and they'll do like the stretched mouth with like the larger upper lip when they're talking and do like an Italian accent. That's what that reminded me of. There's a guy, I think, on TikTok. I can't remember his name, but he does that joke pretty consistently, and it's funny.
Well, I also wonder if it looks like they're melting a lot to me.
Yeah.
Like this way or up and down or whatever. But agreed. Their faces are always doing weird things since they're so fucked up on drugs.
Yeah.
They go to the bar, wait for their room, and as we're kind of panning around this bar, Johnny Depp starts seeing the bar patrons turn into like lizard monster dinosaur things? ? Not sure what they are.
Reptiles of some kind.
Sure, but all of a sudden Dr. Gonzo's also gone. So he's like sitting there freaking out. And then we pan out and we see him freaking out, but everything's normal around him. So we see that quite a lot too. I don't know why it was a direction choice to make it so apparent. We know they're on drugs. We can see their reaction on drugs. I don't need to see all the like overhead shot or the panned out shot or like, I don't know.
I think
focus on the trip, I guess, not the person.
I don't know. I know they do have different shots that portray the different effects that they are feeling in the moment. So I don't know if it's something like that. Like I think when they're talking about taking ether at some point and they talk about how you basically lose all motor functionality and you can watch yourself basically behaving this way. That's why they cut to a low angle wide shot so that way to really give an idea of what it looks like.
I guess that's fair, because especially if you're someone like us who's never done crazy fucked up drugs like this, you might not know what that does to your body.
And it's interesting to see this because I saw in an interview that Terry Gilliam, he wasn't a drug user as of 2008 at least when I saw this interview came out. He was not a drug user, so I can definitely see the challenge. And this is something that it gets brought up a lot, is the representation of drug use and what the effects are really like when it comes to how they're represented in film and television. I don't know. I mean, in terms of because I do have people who have done heavy drugs in my life and have told me their experiences, and what I saw in this film does appear very similar to the experiences that they've told me about.
Right.
So having never done anything like this myself, it's hard to say whether or not it is accurate.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, it seems legit. But then again, because I haven't, if any of you guys out there have done hard drugs and have seen this movie, let us know how accurate it is.
Right. Please comment below. I agree. I mean, obviously you have to, let's assume the actor, which in this case, Johnny Depp's probably not that actor, but let's assume the actor didn't do these drugs. How also are you supposed to,
right?
And, maybe talking to people like you said. I don't know. But I respect the process of the, trying to show you as the viewer and what's happening. I just think sometimes I'm like, I get it. They're fucked up. Like,
yeah.
I don't need to see it again. But anyway, so they go up to their room finally, and someone immediately knocks on the door, and it freaks Duke out. He's always freaked out about anyone knocking on the door throughout this whole film. And this guy enters, and it's their photographer for the day. But Duke is all fucked up in a way that he's seeing like war stuff. He's seeing soldiers. He's seeing a tank randomly. He's seeing bombs being dropped.
He's watching like a reporting of the Vietnam War on television,
right,
which apparently in the book was a completely different scene altogether, where he was like looking out the window and saw a neon sign that was turning into a snake. But like with that would have brought a very similar visual look compared to the previous scene in the bar in the casino. So I believe that they did this scene where he's, seeing all of the war stuff as a way to not be repetitive and to do something different. So yeah, while the film is based on the book, there is a lot that they do change up, to, for consistency's sake, I guess. I don't know. But. Sure.
That makes sense though. I would assume a lot of films adapted from novels take a decent amount of liberties, So this guy's just blabbering on and on, though, about this race that's what they're reporting on, and that's why he's here in Las Vegas.
It's like some dune buggy race or something that they're reporting on. We find out that's what it is.
Right. And he basically, like, shoves him out of the room because, again, super fucked up, so that kind of ends that scene, because then we immediately just cut to the race the next day, and he makes his way to the press tent. Duke does. Apologies. He is alone, though. Gonzo doesn't come with him to this outing, at least. And everyone's pretty much just gambling and drinking in this tent, not doing any sort of reporting or writing. But then we do hear the race is about to start, so everybody goes outside. But Duke goes back to the tent to get a beer. But it's outdoors in the desert, so there's dust everywhere. There's shit everywhere. There's no point in having an open beer in your hand.
He's got his hand covering it, so.
Right. But it's immediately got sand in it. Like, can't really do that.
You see him pour it out, and it's just all this slosh. It's like,
yeah, it's really gross. But you also can't see really well because of all the, dust and everything. But his photographer pops up out of nowhere and tells him to get in their Jeep so he can go take pictures. And Duke does, but as soon as they are taking off down maybe the same trail as these dune buggies and motorcycles or what, he thinks he's hearing machine gun fire and freaks out. But then another vehicle does pull up next to them, and it does have a dead deer on it. So maybe that's where the gunfire came from. I don't know.
Another hallucination by Duke. It's really hard to say, because you really do question, and the character is also, what's real and what isn't. Because we see in the beginning of the scene, or the beginning of the film, when Duke and Gonzo are in the desert, Duke is like waving a fly swatter in the air because he thinks that there's bats everywhere, where we as the audience can clearly see that there's not. But then we later cut to a dead bat in the road, so that it kind of the film is constantly messing with both the characters and the audience's perception of reality.
Right, so. Very true. I didn't think about it like that. Yeah, there's a lot of things in here where I'm like, but then I see it, so
yeah,
makes sense. That makes so much more sense than what I was thinking. But he gets out because he's freaked out of either the gunfire or the deer hanging there, I don't know. And now he just kind of looks stranded in the desert. But we then immediately just cut to him and Gonzo back in their car driving around the strip. So, and again, fucked up again. We then hear like people yelling over again, they're talking, but then we hear loud yelling over top them as that kind of sound thing I mentioned before. But then we immediately pan out and they're on the sidewalk of like a hotel, and they tried to park there. So obviously you can't stay there. They then try to get into a show. A woman, I believe, is singing, but they just get kicked out almost immediately. Then they make it to some sort of like circus bar, which I have fun facts about, but I didn't realize this was actually a thing. That I've never been to Vegas for more than maybe a couple hours, like passing through it. So I've never gone to like actual casinos or done any gambling or done anything. But this, circus bar area is pretty crazy. And for someone who's fucked up, I would think that would be very... I don't know if I could hold my shit together, honestly. Yeah. The lights and the sounds and the whatever.
Who knows?
And they're
maybe
huffing...
maybe if you're on a big acid trip, maybe that's what you're seeking, You want to see all those bright colors. I don't know. I feel like it would just make my brain melt, but...
I feel like I would just puke everywhere.
Yeah.
I have really bad depth perception, and I also have bad motion sickness. So yeah. I feel like anytime I'm doing this, I'm just going to throw up. But they're huffing more mescaline or ether maybe this time, because you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, I think it's ether.
Sure. Huffing ether, which, fun fact, I have to use ether at my job from time to time. And I'm in a full hazmat suit. Okay. So, just as a warning, don't huff ether. It will kill you. Especially in like that rag format they're doing. That's, oh my God, so dangerous. And yes, how are they alive? I don't know. But as they are walking up to the circus, like you mentioned before, that we get that shot very low to the ground, and it looks like they're drunk. And Duke even says, that's what this drug makes you. It makes you just look wasted. So people think you're drunk.
Like the town drunkard. Yeah.
Exactly. So nobody's really paying attention to you and blah, blah, blah. They do go into the circus for a bit, huff more drugs, and then somehow make it back to their hotel room. We then see a scene of them in the elevator with Cameron Diaz, who also has a cameo in this film.
I forgot about that.
I know. She's so young.
Yeah, I know.
It's crazy. Dr. Gonzo, though, starts threatening everybody in the elevator with a knife, but he's remembering this as he was hitting on Cameron Diaz, and she was, like, loving it. But it's like, no, that's not what happened.
Not at all, bud.
No. Duke convinces him to put the knife away, though, and gets him into the room, and then tells him he's going to go get his car washed, which is random. But he just makes his way back to the lobby and of the hotel, I believe, and is just remarking on the people gambling. And he goes to play some games but loses. He then gets back up to the room. I don't know how long he was really gone. But this room is fucking trashed.
Yeah.
Shit everywhere. And Gonzo's in the bathtub fully clothed, but he's also messing with, I don't know if it's a radio or a tape recorder, like a old school first edition tape recorder. And it's really close to the tub, so obviously if he drops it, he's going to electrocute himself. So Duke quickly tries to take it away from him and then just keeps telling him to calm down. And he's going to go nap for a couple hours so they can maybe sober up for a bit. Duke then climbs into a box, which, where'd that box come from? It's literally like something got delivered in it.
I don't know. Who knows where anything in that room has come from? It's such a shithole. And that's like their whole thing, is that they like are consistently renting hotel rooms that they just completely destroy.
I know. Those poor people that work there. I feel bad for them.
Yeah.
But no sooner does he crawl into this box to try to sleep, he has to run back into the bathroom because Gonzo is screaming his head off, and he's poking the radio with the shower rod, I think. So again, just trying to like electrocute himself, maybe.
Yeah. I
don't know. But he keeps telling Duke to also drop it in the bathtub, and he's like, look, just close your eyes. Get in the warm water, go back to sleep, and he tries to like back out, but that's not doing anything to sober him up. So he again just tries to hit him with the shower rod, and oh my God, he finally gets the door shut though. Duke does, and we hear Gonzo kind of yelling as he tries to sleep again. Then Gonzo pops out of the bathroom with a knife, and Duke tells him he has mace, so he should stop. in a loudspeaker, not just
Yeah,
telling
he's got a
him.
megaphone just yelling at him.
And again, just go lay down, get some rest. He does go back in the bathroom, I think, maybe just out of frame. And then Duke smokes meth, I think. Not sure. It's in a
Maybe.
light bulb. So
Oh, yeah. That might be that, or maybe it's crack. I don't know.
it could be crack. Yeah. I don't know. We then see Duke
Leave in the comments below what you would smoke out of a light bulb.
Indeed. Now I'm curious. Also, don't smoke anything out of a light bulb. That filament is toxic.
Yeah, maybe not.
No, please don't. Find literally anything else. We then see Duke, though, in some sort of club, and he's drugged up again, and he's reminiscing now about, I think it's 5 years ago, and he's just doing every drug that's handed to him, and again, I mentioned, how the fuck did more people not just straight up die all the time back in the 60s and 70s?
I'm sure there was
All the
probably a
stuff.
ton of people that did. Everybody was doing them, so.
God, I know. It was insane. We cut back to him typing on a typewriter, and he's kind of just narrating his drugged out days, and we flip back and forth between, you know, him doing drugs or at a club and then talking about it. And then that's also intercut with some of your standard newsreel scenes of like kids protesting at colleges and not Woodstock, but like that kind of a vibe where everybody's watching a band and outside and,
Yeah.
you know, just reminiscing about the 60s into the 70s, I'm assuming. But it also would have been such a weird time to be alive. I try to talk to my parents sometimes about some stuff because they were, 18, 19, 20, around there. And I don't know. It's just been such a weird time to be that age, and I can't see myself there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like from my parents were born in my dad was born in the early 70s, my mom was born in the late 70s, so they were kind of like growing up when this was all kind of starting to move, like counterculture
Right.
was starting to disappear a little bit in that context. And my grandparents were, good suburban Catholics who, shunned anybody who would dare touch the devil's lettuce or whatever. So I don't.
The devil's crack.
Yeah. So I have very little firsthand knowledge of what, I can only go off of what's in the media and in the history books. So.
Yeah. My parents didn't really fuck with drugs either. My mom was in college, so she was a Catholic college.
Yeah.
So she wasn't doing anything. And my
Yeah.
dad was in Vietnam. So
Yeah.
smoking a lot of weed, but other
Yeah.
than that, opium wasn't even a thing yet. They hadn't even figured that out,
Yeah.
he said. By the time he left, it was, even then, barely going through the soldiers. So anyway, but we now cut to daytime, and this poor bellhop guy who's just trying to bring them food. Does Gonzo... No, I think Duke points the gun at him because that woke him up, and he's, who the fuck are you in my room, blah, blah, blah. And the bellhop guy looks around, but he doesn't say anything about the room, and I'm thinking in my head, like, I would immediately get somebody to get these guys out of this hotel. Like, I don't know why that doesn't happen.
Probably just scared because they have a gun. Probably similar situation because later we'll see this with they do something similar with another with one of the maids.
Hotel
in another
employee.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Duke realizes that he saw the room and is like, look, we got to get out of here because we've completely fucked up this room and it's trash. He says to Gonzo, but Gonzo's gone. So I don't know if he left, leaving him to like fend for himself or what, but he's gone and he didn't know that he left.
Yeah. Gonzo just kind of disappears and then reappears a few times throughout the film. And he's like in different locations all the time because like there'll be times where Duke will call Gonzo and he's like, "Oh, I'm back in my office in L.A." And then he'll like go to his next. Duke will go to his next assignment in a hotel room, and there Gonzo will be,
Yeah. And yeah, he'll just pop up for sure.
So it is.
Because that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, and it becomes a little difficult to follow the story sometimes because of that. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it's difficult to follow the story. One, because
there's really no story.
Yeah, I was going to say, because there really isn't one. But,
no.
Yeah.
So, yes, Duke packs up all his stuff and is about to leave, but the guy at the front desk, manager maybe, I don't know, tells him he has a telegram. And then he keeps, like, you know, staying with the car. So maybe he's trying to get him to pay, but we don't know. And he does kind of mention something about Mr. Gonzo being important, and maybe he's thinking he's paying the bill, so I don't know. But I'm sure no one has paid that bill, and those poor people have to clean up that room.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So then we cut to Duke driving again, and a cop's behind him. It kind of turns into a little bit of a high-speed chase, but then he pulls over and acts like nothing's wrong. He's, like, smoking a cigarette, and the cop gets out, and it's none other than goddamn Gary Busey. Yeah. Also has a cameo in this movie. He asked for his license, and Duke kind of puts his hands up and is like, I'm guilty, I'm a criminal. And he's like, what an odd thing to say straight to a police officer.
Yeah.
And then he tells him to go to the next rest area and get some sleep. It's such an odd back and forth between them.
Because, like, the cop is, like, kind of super chill, but he's, like, really aggressive about being chill. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, just, I'm not going to do anything. Just go. You clearly are delusional or delirious. You just need to lay down. But he's, like, very, like, aggressive about it. So.
Which, again, we don't know if that's real.
Yeah.
Because this is such an unreliable narrator in Duke. We don't know. Mm-hmm. But then he kisses him.
Well, we don't see that. He says, because the cop is like,
oh no, he asked for a
kiss.
Kiss.
He's like, can I get a kiss before you leave? I'm so lonely out here.
Right. My bad. Even weirder.
Yeah.
To ask. But he does get back in the car, goes to the rest area, and again sees Toby Mcguire. But immediately turns the car around and speeds off. We then see him on a payphone randomly, also out in the middle of nowhere, this payphone. Mm-hmm. And he's talking to Gonzo, and Gonzo is telling him, I sent you a telegraph. Didn't you read it? I told you to go to the Flamingo. And Gonzo's in his office, now in LA, like you kind of mentioned before. He flips back and forth. But there is a huge Nazi flag behind him. Did you
I didn't
see
even
that?
notice that.
Yeah.
No, really?
Straight up Nazi flag. And I'm like, what? What a weird thing to put there. Also, he's Hispanic.
Right.
Why would that be there?
I gotta find this.
Yeah, Google it while I continue, because it's there for sure.
Now I have Nazi flag, Fear and Loathing in my search history, so that's great. And I definitely didn't get what I was looking for, so I'm just gonna... Yeah,
I'll screenshot it.
I'm just gonna close out of that now.
Okay. I will screenshot it and put it up on Instagram for sure, because it's there.
Cool.
Duke then is like backtracking, and he's like, no, I'm not out in the middle of the desert. I'll head right to the Flamingo and blah, blah, blah. But he has to get a new car because he's trashed. This red one is completely trashed. So he does get a new white car, which is really nice. Both these vehicles are really nice looking.
Because he basically steals them. Like, he just drives them off the lot while they're inspecting them, so.
Right. What does he care?
Yeah.
He does get to the Flamingo, though, but there's a conference for attorneys who prosecute people on drugs, like an annual conference.
Yeah, this is hilarious. I enjoyed this scene because it's just like your stereotypical like government officials who have clearly like not done any of this shit before and know nothing about it, telling everybody it's like, you're gonna go to hell if you smoke weed. Right.
And of all things, weed. Like, please, don't even bother mentioning LSD or meth or crack or coke or anything. Weed is all they talk about this whole time in this conference. And you're right. It's all just a bunch of old white dudes sitting around laughing about hippies and people doing drugs.
I mean, Reagan literally said that weed is, like, the most dangerous drug out of all of them.
He made it a Schedule 1.
Yeah.
It wasn't even on the radar yet in Reagan era. Which, don't even get me started on fucking Reagan era and how that completely fucked up our entire country. To this day. But Christopher Maloney has a cameo in this as well.
Oh,
and
that's
he's
right.
the front desk hotel guy. I loved his 5 seconds he had in this film. It was hilarious.
It was pretty good. There was a show that he was doing for a while that I really tried to get into that was on the Sci-Fi Channel. I can't remember the name of it. I think it was called Happy. It was when he had this like a little imaginary like unicorn stuck in his head, and he was like he's a detective. I don't know. I watched like the first episode of it, and I thought it was mostly entertaining for a sci-fi original TV series. But I don't know. I think he's doing the SVU reboot right now or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's back on SVU.
Yeah.
So there's people yelling at poor Christopher Maloney at the front desk, and Duke just basically walks right up in front of everybody and is like, hey, I have a room, and, you people calm down, and he immediately gets him to his room. Mm-hmm. Dr. Gonzo is up there already with, we know it's Christina Ricci in a second, but her name is Lucy, and as soon as Duke walks in the room, she tries to bite his leg.
Yeah.
Which is weird. And also don't know her relationship, but we know she's underage, like, immediately.
Yep.
Plus, Duke says something to him as he pulls him out in the hallway about the child being in the room, so.
Yeah, and so in this, they do, for the film adaptation, it is still disturbing, with Gonzo clearly, nothing is said or spoken of, but we know that between Gonzo and this girl, it's, nothing legal is going on.
No.
But in the book, it's apparently a lot worse because it's when Duke goes in, Lucy is just like borderline catatonic, tripping on acid, and then Gonzo just walks into the room like completely butt-ass naked.
Right, so he raped her, basically.
Yeah, and this, it's like...
Rape is implied.
Yeah, visually, it's not nearly as bad, but you can still infer kind of the same thing, so...
Ugh. Well, all garbage.
Are we gonna... Can we go over a movie that does not have some kind of rape in it? Like, I feel like it's just been consistently just uncomfortable, like, rape scenes or hints at rape.
Yeah, I think our Christmas movie lineup is rape-free.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I will Google it.
Yeah,
but...
all right, good. I think we need a little change of pace.
Yeah,
Good Lord.
I think for rape-free for Christmas. Merry Christmas.
It's a rape-free Christmas, ladies and gentlemen.
It is. And then in January, we only have comedies. So,
yay.
Hopefully no rape there either.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Films were just so... It's not that they were depicting something that wasn't true, because this is obviously something that I'm sure occurred constantly, especially back then. But they still take that... You can take the turn away from it, and most directors don't, especially when they have women in their cast.
Yeah. Depending
on the movie. So, unfortunately, that's just a reality of any movie really before the 2010s. I think 2010s, you'll get into some
that was
better...
when we started to get a lot, like, American culture started to get a lot more politically correct, was kind of in the early to mid 2010s.
Yeah.
So very recently. But.
And we're not there yet,
yeah.
year-wise, so we might have a few more films with some rapey scenes.
Yeah.
But, again, it is implied this poor girl is, A, underage, and B, Gonzo's either trying to have sex with her or already has, and it's all gross. But Duke is basically like, yo, we have to get rid of her. Like, you can't keep her here. I'm not sure why, besides the fact that she's underage and possibly kidnapped. Not even sure how she got to the hotel
kidnapped,
room.
Possibly raped, possibly going to out them for all of the shit that they've been stunting over the past who knows how many days they've been in Vegas at this point, because there is no like real way that we as the audience are able to keep track of how long this whole thing has been and how long they've been in Vegas. So
I'm gonna say this is a matter of days, like 2 to 3 days tops.
Yeah.
So touche. I don't know.
It seems that way, but like, I don't know. From my understanding, you're using acid can really fuck up your depiction of time. So
sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess they could lose some days. So maybe it's like a week total. I don't know.
Maybe.
But yes, he wants her out of the room, and Gonzo gets her to another hotel room, and that's basically all that happens there. Mm-hmm. So then we cut back to their room, though, and we see Gonzo puking all over the place, and Duke's telling him we have to go, we're going to be late, and we're now in a conference room of the hotel, and this is where the doctor's speaking about drug use, constantly talks about marijuana, not any other drug, and Gonzo's getting all pissed, though, while this guy speaks, and he's like, I'm just going to go back to the casino. So I don't know why he flipped out initially, but because isn't he supposed to be there? Isn't that the whole reason they're at the hotel?
Well, so Duke is there because he's a reporter or a journalist, and he's sent there as an assignment. But Gonzo is just Duke's attorney. So I think the only reason that Gonzo is there in any of this is just because him and Duke are friends over their infatuation with drugs.
So I thought the first hotel they were at was because of the journalism coverage, yes, that he had to do. I thought this hotel they're at now was because Gonzo's an attorney and this is a conference for attorneys. So I thought he had to be at this hotel. That's why he moved Duke to that hotel.
That makes sense. I thought it was just that Duke was there just covering the event and that Gonzo was just tagging along. But I guess that makes sense too if it is if it is like a... Yeah, that makes sense. But
I honestly don't know. That's just where my brain went.
This movie is so all over the place. Like I said, there is no real plot. There is no real story. It pretty much just is like one watching an acid trip. That's all it is. So
what we're saying is this doesn't matter.
Yeah.
None of this matters. But Duke's there by himself. Then two people start making out right next to him and like on him a little bit, which is fucking weird. It's a weird thing to put there. So he bones out.
And in all the places to start, display public affection is in the middle of one of these conferences.
It's the most random thing that's in the movie, I think, for sure. Aside from like maybe the reptile people at the beginning. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he bones out because he's like, this is fucking weird. And again, they both make it back to the hotel room. And Duke has taken the literal drug briefcase that they like bring with them to these things to show the cops what drugs look like. If you've never seen one, you weren't a child of the 90s, so you didn't have to go through DARE. But also, I don't know if those are even real drugs in there. They might have been
Speaking
then.
Of DARE,
I know they're not now.
I won the DARE essay contest when I was in 5th grade and got a free...
So you did have DARE.
I did have DARE.
Okay.
I don't think the program still exists. I think
no, because all it taught kids to do was how to do drugs. This is how you do drugs.
Well, from my understanding, how it was in like the 80s and early 90s is that they were a lot more strict with it, where it's like kind of teaching kids to fear it. Where my experience with DARE wasn't so much to show kids. It was kind of just to show the reality, and like it was more of like a, hey, if you get caught doing this, I gotta, because it was all taught by police officers that would come in and teach this stuff. So it was always like, hey, and I think Eddie Burback has a video on YouTube that it kind of explains the DARE program kind of further in depth. But yeah, he does kind of explain like at the later end, it's kind of like, hey, this stuff is illegal, and if you do it, I have to be the guy to arrest you. So please make sure that I don't have to arrest you. It was a lot more about just teaching kids how to make smart decisions when approached with these kinds of things, and not just drugs, but also like gun violence and violence in general. Just trying to teach kids to make smart decisions, and because they know that we're all gonna come across this stuff in our lifetime. It's just how it is. So it's just
right.
So I have fairly good memories of the DARE program. I didn't feel like it was stuff that was trying to be shoved down our throats by a bunch of tone deaf cops.
So my experience, got it.
Yeah. So
yours was different.
Yeah. But yeah, I won the DARE essay contest in 5th grade, and I got a free City Barbecue lunch.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, That was pretty dope.
Good for you.
But anyway.
Anyway, but that's exactly what the briefcase looks like. And I don't know if those are literal drugs in there or not, but hilarious that he stole it. Honestly, in a, hotel full of police and attorneys. So there's also a message from Lucy, though, when they get back to the room. And Duke thinks she's going to frame them for something. So he, keeps telling Gonzo to call her and calm her down. And Gonzo looks at him and says, look, go take this little brown bottle out of my bag, which is, again, God knows what. Gonzo calls her back, and he tells Duke, just do a drop. That's all you need. But he, obviously doesn't. And does a ton of, whatever's in that bottle. It drips a bunch on his tongue with this little dripper thing.
I think it's blood straight out of a human adrenal gland.
That's not a thing. And that's not a thing that would make you fucked up.
And I'm pretty sure that's what it is in the movie, though.
If you took fluid out of an adrenal gland and wanted to swallow it, fine, I guess. Mm-hmm. It doesn't fuck you up like that, though. You might get some sort of reaction in your body because you're not supposed to be ingesting straight adrenal gland fluid, but you have adrenal glands. They're producing, fluid in your body. So,
right.
I'm not a doctor, but
and maybe it isn't so much that I'm pretty sure that is what it is that they're taking.
I think that's what they say.
Yeah. So maybe it's not so much a trip that that Duke is having with that. Maybe it's more of a bad physical reaction to everything because of him ingesting that and how much he ingests of it. So,
right.
I don't know. I don't have a medical degree. I don't know how this stuff works.
I work with doctors. I will ask them because now I'm curious if that's what would happen to you if you just straight drank that.
Just go up to him and like, hey, you remember that scene in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas?
I don't know if a lot of doctors I work with would have seen it. They're older. But I will ask and get back to you.
Maybe they lived it. Maybe they're like, oh yeah, that movie's great. It's a perfect depiction of my early 20s.
Could have been.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But he is fucked up from this stuff in the bottle. Acts out this whole scene with him being a chicken or something because he puts a towel on his head and starts moving around crazy like that. And again, he just took way too much of that drug. They do call it adrenochrome, which, yes, mentioning the adrenal gland, but I don't know. I'll put a note in the show notes if that's a real thing or not, because I don't think it is. But then he does cocaine on top of it, because, again, 70s.
Woo.
And how the fuck are you alive? He is tripping hardcore, and Gonzo's starting to turn into some sort of, devil in front of him. He eventually falls off the bed and just, crawls to the floor, and then we cut to black, because he clearly blacks out. And the first thing that happens when he wakes up is there is water everywhere in this hotel room. The
entire room is just completely flooded.
Flooded, right. And there's knives and ketchup all over the wall. There's a gun in the toilet. A fake chicken bottom with high heels on also in the toilet. The most random shit I've ever seen in my life. He starts to flash in and out of remembering the past hours, days, we don't know. And we see this poor maid who was brought into the room. Gonzo's basically suffocating her. But then they both convince her they're cops looking for a drug ring and ask her to help them to get out of her probably pressing charges / getting them kicked out / arrested of this hotel.
Yeah.
And for some reason she buys it, which is ridiculous because they are clearly acting so fucked up.
Yeah.
Duke then finds the tape recorder, and he has literally taped it to his stomach with a microphone taped to his face. So he's recording things throughout the entire time he was doing this drug or blacked out or whatever. And he starts to play it back. We then cut to a scene of Gonzo being beat up in a parking lot near a diner. And Duke is saying that this is North Vegas and you only go there when you can't get a room anywhere else. But they have a room, so I'm not sure why they're there. So then they're at this diner, and he is completely degrading to this waitress that is working here and scares the shit out of her because he basically threatens her with his gun and takes a pie. It's like this whole and forth.
What is this, the device that he has that is supposedly a gun that he's threatening her with? I couldn't make out what exactly that was. Could you tell?
Maybe it was just a knife. I can't remember if it was a knife or a gun, but he threatens her with something because she said she's going to call the police. And he threatens her with it and then takes the pie.
Because I know that Duke has this, I don't know, he like with the maid, he has this one, like it looks like a hairdryer almost that he's like threatening her with.
Right. But in the restaurant, because Gonzo has a knife and a gun. We've seen it at least twice. Yeah. So I don't remember what he threatens this waitress with, but it is one of the two.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was thinking the scene with Duke threatening the maid still.
No, we're past that already.
Yeah.
Which, sorry, but I kind of breezed over that.
No, it's all good.
I'm breezing over this whole movie, to be honest. It's so hard to, like, make sense of anything. So, again, he takes the pie. She's terrified. She's also a very famous actress, and I can't remember her name, but she's in tons of stuff. Another cameo. So they take the whole thing, and then Duke is starting to walk out of the restaurant with the whole plate of food, but then I think he realizes he probably can't do that, so he puts it back.
Yeah.
And they leave. And Duke then we cut to him back at the hotel room, sorry, and he's reading a newspaper. But then he gets up and starts, like, again, they do this weird thing where they're cutting back and forth between what maybe happened the last 24 hours. So this gets a little muddy. I apologize. We see the convertible they rented now, the white one, is also completely ruined. We cut back to the waitress who's just crying as they leave. So I don't know if these are like memories that are coming back to him, and that's why it's such a like chaotic and weird order in this last, stretch of the movie. But we then see him and Gonzo driving around Vegas all crazy. They almost run into Lucy walking across the street, but they immediately just take off in reverse and go back down the road and somehow get Gonzo to the airport, but not before they like off-road into this fence and drive directly onto the tarmac, which would be so illegal now. But Gonzo gets on the plane, all normal-like as you do, after taking out a fence and then beelining it for an airplane. So then Duke takes off in the wrecked-ass car. We're back in the fucked-up hotel room, and there's more water now. So I don't know where all the water's coming from or where the leak is, but fine. He's typing more on his typewriter, again, talking about the whole acid culture. The camera pans out over the whole disaster of a room. We then cut back to Duke driving again across through the desert, going back towards LA in this fucked up car. And I don't know how it's still running, but it is.
Yeah.
We pass a sign that says, now leaving Fear and Loathing Las Vegas. And that's the movie.
That's the movie.
That's literally the movie.
I liked it. It's fucked up. It's weird. It's jank. And I love it.
I'm glad you liked it. Truly, I'm glad you found some really good points to make for sure.
Because my buddy Sam absolutely loves this movie. Like, he had
my husband
posters
loves this movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting just now having seen it. Like I said, having people that have experienced, drug, not to this extent where they're like coked and, using acid like completely out of their mind, but like having used some of these substances. And like I said earlier, how they like kind of describe their experience and how it does kind of match up with what you at least see. But yeah, it's interesting to get to see that.
For sure. Yeah. I've never done acid, never done LSD.
Yeah.
I just never done hard drugs. I don't know. I was exposed to it, but I guess I saw some of my friends and I was like, you look like fucking idiots. I'm good. Like,
I just feel like
stick
it
with
would
my
break my
stick with my
brain.
alcohol.
Yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
some stuff.
I don't really have much in terms of, extra behind the scenes, fun facts. I did see it was a budget of 18 million.
Okay, that's a
it's
lot
interest-
higher than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. But apparently that's still, like, it's hard to determine what exactly is considered a low budget movie, because I mean, you could make a feature film for, billions of dollars and for nothing, and depending on what it is you're going for, still produce a similar quality. So it's
Well, I'd say anything 10 mil or under, that's low budget.
yeah.
No matter what you're trying to shoot, horror, drama, comedy, that's a low budget film.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
18
guess
's not bad. I mean,
yeah.
that's pretty
I mean, I
good
guess
budget.
I guess you would have to look at, like, okay, big Hollywood studios like Disney or, Paramount or Lionsgate or whatever, or whoever the, looking at movies that they are currently producing and the budgets, and then comparing it to more independent studios. And I guess,
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
I did not see how much the film actually grossed.
I have it. 13.5 in its opening weekend.
Yikes. Okay.
Yeah, that's not a
So-
lot. And it didn't do much better in the home market for a while.
Yeah, it is interesting though to see that, like I was saying, it has fairly low scores on most, like, movie review platforms. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 50, Metacritic a 41. But usually those are based on, like, one person.
Yeah,
That, like,
you have
one
to see
critic.
how many ratings there really are.
Yeah. I usually
Yeah.
will go off of, if I'm looking up a movie, Google will actually have, like, their own rating where you can give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And I think that's a more accurate rating compared to just one person who is hired to write a movie and probably has no idea, like, the context behind the movie or anything like that.
Yeah.
It has an 89% on Google reviews. Altogether, a 4.5 out of 5. It's very well reviewed on Google. How much of that is because of nostalgia versus people actually considering the quality of the film is kind of up in the air. That's kind of how it is when it comes to cult classic films, is that, like, the high rating, the raving reviews that people give today, is that because, it's actually a quality film, or because it came out or you remember seeing it in theaters when you were a kid.
Right.
And when you're a kid, it's hard to determine what is a good and what's a bad movie. I know that was the case for me for the longest time, is that, movies were movies. I didn't really have an idea of what good and bad movies were. So
Right. And you have professional training to an extent, and I definitely don't. And
yeah. But yeah, and
I have some fun facts.
yeah, go for it.
So almost none of the movies actually shot in Las Vegas.
I'd imagine.
Pretty much none of it. The only two casinos that were used as locations were the Stardust and the Riviera. They've both been torn down since the film, so they're not even there anymore. But the Gene Dry Lake Bed, which is where that Mint 400 race sequences were shot, is a real thing, and it's still there. It's south of Las Vegas, and they hold it every year. So that's kind of cool. Didn't know that was a thing. Depp actually moved into Thompson's basement in Aspen for research for this film, and two of them became really good friends. He even financed Thompson's funeral fireworks spectacular in 2005. I thought that was kind of sweet that he became friends with him.
Yeah.
But he's also in another one of his movie adaptations, so that kind of makes sense too. He also used a lot of Thompson's own wardrobe since he was spending so much time there. And a lot of his Hawaiian shirts and his green Las Vegas visor were specific things from Thompson's own wardrobe. The Toby Mcguire hair thing I was talking about.
Yeah.
His head is shaved at the top with hair beginning right above his ears all the way almost down to his waist. There was a clause in Mcguire's contract because he was about to shoot Spider-Man scenes and could not shave his head. You couldn't shave his head. It would have cost the film $15,000 to physically do that.
Yeah.
So that whole thing is a wig, essentially. But they messed up a bunch of, in the car in particular, they messed up a bunch of scenes with the bald cap and wig type scenario. Like it kept moving or something happened. You could tell it wasn't really his hair. And they had to go back in post and like digitally do a bunch of shit that cost them a bunch of money. And it ended up costing them well over $15,000 in editing. So they should have just shaved Toby Mcguire's head. Yeah. Which I thought was hilarious. That crazy circus bar is actually patterned after an actual bar in Las Vegas called Circus Circus. But that bar refused to let them shoot there. So they mirrored some of the attractions there, but that's not the real hotel. The large gorilla statue, though, that sits in front of the entrance when they are all fucked up and walking in, Johnny Depp stole from the set and actually is in his front yard to this day. And it's a like 10, 12 foot tall gorilla.
Nice.
Yeah. We kind of already talked about the $3.5 million on its opening weekend and critics hating this film. The cult status really didn't come till about 5 to 10 years later through home video, and then with a new generation of people finding this movie and absolutely loving it. So super weird. And then you mentioned the Rolling Stone thing, how these articles turn into a full-blown novel.
I believe it was 2 articles primarily that were released in the Rolling Stone that later got re-released into a novel the year following. Yeah.
I kind of said this at the top, but I'm not sure why this is such a cult classic. The acting and the bonkers storyline is probably part of it. It's a classic 90s style generational film. So there's some movies that I love from that time frame. Go is a really good example. If you've never seen it, check it out. It's a very 90s drug heavy, trippy movie, but I think it relates to people in their late, early 30s and probably your generation more than this film would. So check that out. I think it would be cool for you to just watch that and kind of see the differences in the two. They're only like 4 or 5 years apart. So, and then Boondock Saints, I think, takes a lot of not drug fucked up liberties that this movie does, but the crazy story plot line. And I think some of the same cinematography things happen in that movie that happen in this movie.
Yeah.
So
I love Boondock Saints. I have a Boondock Saints poster in my living room.
I love it. It's one of my top 5 favorite movies.
It's great.
Yeah. But I think movies along those lines maybe is why a different generation really found this movie amazing when they found it. So
yeah,
that's all my fun facts.
It's funny. We've now covered 2 movies that were produced in the 90s about the 70s where there's not really a plot. It's just
right. The fucked up era that is the 70s. Woo. Glad I wasn't there. Not gonna lie.
I don't know. Part of me wishes, like, not that I would really like try to do a lot of dumb shit, but like I feel like back then it was so easy to just get away with anything.
Oh yeah, it was.
Compared to like my childhood where it's like I would get grounded if I didn't text my mom that I was driving over to the gas station real quick to grab some snacks or whatever.
Oh my God.
Which has happened.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's not cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so
yeah.
Yeah. That's
it's the movie.
All right. Well,
so we're into wintry season. We're into Christmas already.
Yes. What do we got planned for the next episode?
So we had 2 viewer requests for next month, which is awesome. Thank you so much for those. Our first one is Silent Night, Deadly Night. So we'll do that the first, and then we're sticking to it and hope you do too. We are doing Die Hard. It is a Christmas movie and we're doing it.
I'm so excited.
I'm excited for Christmas too.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Die Hard is such a good movie. It's so good.
I can't wait to take notes on it, honestly.
Yeah. I'm actually like really interested in like looking more into like behind the scenes stuff because I've seen the movie like a ton of times.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
But like learning more about like the making of it's going to be interesting. So
I have also seen Silent Night, Deadly Night. We're
That
going to
I've
watch
never
the
even heard of.
original. It's a Christmas horror movie. So it's based at Christmas time, but people get killed in the 70s again.
So we're watching the original. Is that the plan?
Yes, we will
From
watch
84?
the original.
Okay.
Is it 84 or 78?
I looked it up in 84 was the...
Then 84. 84 it is.
Okay.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, listeners, for sending those requests in. That was super cool. We will shout out the specific listener on the episode. So
For sure. And if you
stay
do
tuned
have,
for that.
if any of you guys have any other recommendations on movies that we should watch for this show, leave them in the comments either on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or shoot us a DM on Instagram. There's plenty of ways that you can get in touch with us. Of course, we do appreciate everybody who tunes into this podcast, whether you're listening or watching it on YouTube. We certainly do put a lot of time and effort into it. Sorry that this episode came out kind of a week later than it was supposed to. I got caught up with a bunch of school shit and a new job, and my brain is cottage cheese right now. So
Well, and
appreciate
Thanksgiving.
and Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So we appreciate everybody who has kept up with the show and doesn't take issue with the inconsistency of the uploads like I do, because that stresses me out.
We will get back to our regularly scheduled routine.
Yes.
Gage is doing more important things than I am in my life, so he needs to focus on that too. So, but yes, we very much appreciate you sticking with us.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's going to be about it for this episode of the Cult Cinema Podcast. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.